It's 5:05 and welcome into a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Well, of course, we continue our coverage this morning of Operation Charlotte's Web. It kicked off on Saturday as Customs and Border Protection, CBP, started conducting operations throughout the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. And this morning, according to the latest from the Department of Homeland Security, more than 250 people were arrested by federal agents during the first 4 days of that immigration operation. According to the most recent press release from DHS, Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said, quote, "While the media and sanctuary politicians try and spearhead falsehoods and demand DHS and demean DHS law enforcement, the men and women of DHS are risking their lives and safety to arrest illegal criminal aliens that are victimizing Americans. We are going to continue to do our job and stand up for North Carolinians who live in fear because of violent criminal illegal aliens." In the most recent press release from DHS, they do show pictures, name, and list out some of the convictions, some of the arrests that these individuals have had in the past, histories of domestic violence, assault, breaking and entering, larceny, driving while impaired, carrying firearms. Of course, that would be illegal, as a non-U.S. resident cannot legally purchase a firearm from a gun store or any other place of legal purchase. Those are some of the most recent arrests that DHS is pointing out, and they say that these are some of the worst that have been arrested in Charlotte. They highlight an individual who is a criminal illegal alien from Guatemala who had a final order to remove from an immigration court back in 2022. However, he's still in the United States. He's been convicted on domestic violence threats and assaults, and previously arrested for injury to personal property. Highlighting another individual, a criminal illegal alien from Mexico, convicted for driving while intoxicated, driving without a valid driver's license, and previously arrested for assault with a deadly weapon. Also, another individual from Belize convicted for breaking and entering, larceny, tampering with the vehicle, and robbery with a firearm/dangerous weapon. The DHS continues to provide that information on a daily basis as the operations do continue to roll out across the Queen City. Agents with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, while it is not immediately clear how much longer they will be in Charlotte, some online rumors and estimates say it will be about a week, so we would be coming towards the end of those potential operations if some of those early online rumors are the case. And of course, the goal of all of this, targeting undocumented immigrants, more specifically those with criminal histories. According to the Department of Homeland Security, those arrested in Charlotte include alleged gang members, both foreign and domestic gangs, people charged with a wide variety of crimes, from things drinking while intoxicated, aggravated assault to simple larceny, all of those being produced and published by DHS. United States Senator Ted Budd took to social media to opine on the ongoing situation. He posted on his social media accounts on Wednesday afternoon saying, quote, "The open border policies of the Biden administration and sanctuary cities are neither humane nor responsible. Allowing dangerous illegal aliens to walk the streets freely is creating the same circumstances here that many immigrants fled to America to avoid in their home countries. More importantly, it is endangering Americans in their own communities. Federal law enforcement has been tasked with removing criminal offenders who never should have been in the United States, and they should carry out this mission responsibly to ensure that violent individuals are quickly identified, detained, and deported. Orderly and systematic removal of those who do not only violate our immigration law, but also pose a threat to our communities is essential for protecting families across the state of North Carolina." That's the end of the comments there from Republican United States Senator Ted Budd, as these operations were in their fifth day on Wednesday here across the state of North Carolina. Now we turn our attention to Raleigh, where we learned earlier this week that Customs and Border Protection, potentially ICE as well, would be making their way to the state's capital. Those operations seem to be relatively small in scale and scope, as most of the public media, in terms of press releases from DHS and DHS officials commenting on this, have all surrounded around the operation in Charlotte. As you know, Charlotte's Web is the name of that operation. We haven't heard a whole lot out of Raleigh since Monday, and it was reported by multiple news outlets in and around the Triangle that would be just a one-day operation. It is not immediately clear this morning whether those operations will start back up or if it was simply a one-day exercise that was taking place. However, that has not stopped protesters across the state. Hundreds of them began marching in downtown Durham last night to protest immigration operations from Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection, as well as ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. More than 100 people gathered to take place in that march in downtown Durham. There was also similar marches that took place in Cary. That is a suburb just outside of downtown Raleigh, as those individuals protested there. Very similar scenes to what we saw Saturday, Sunday, and Monday throughout Charlotte as the original operation, Charlotte's Web, began to take place. Again, this morning, still a little unclear as to how much longer exactly this will take place. What we can say for pretty much certain is that this is not expected to be a long-term deployment like we have seen in other cities, Chicago, Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, Seattle. This is set to be a kind of an intermediary or a short-term operation being conducted by Customs and Border Protection, but I will note that we have not received any public information as to just exactly how long this will take place. We will, of course, keep our eyes on all of the details. One of the individuals providing this information is the commander-at-large on this, Gregory Bavino. He is based out of Los Angeles, but has been conducting these operations for Customs and Border Protection throughout the city of Charlotte. He worked for a pretty lengthy period of time in Chicago, as well as the federal government, the Trump administration, his Department of Homeland Security has made it abundantly clear that they are going to crack down on illegal immigration across pretty much any state or city. Yes, highlighting some of the sanctuary cities and sanctuary counties and sanctuary towns across the state of North Carolina and the nation, as those have become bastions of harboring those that have broken federal immigration law and are in the U.S. illegally, regardless of their violent status or nature while in the United States. We will continue our coverage right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and over on our website, carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:14 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center on your Thursday morning commute. Boomer, what's going on with those wild turkeys hanging out? What's going on there?
Man, we got a turkey trot going on this morning.
Oh, boy.
The real live kind. That's it, man, right about a week away.
It's 5:20. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. A busy day in the federal court system yesterday as a 3-judge panel yesterday considered a request to block North Carolina's new congressional map for the 2026 election. The court hearing took place in Winston-Salem as 2 sets of plaintiffs are seeking an injunction against a map that Republican legislative leaders are defending. This is all tied to Senate Bill 249. We talked about this over the last probably 6 weeks or so. The map shifts counties between Congressional District 1 and 3 as legislative leaders say that the changes are designed to help Republicans pick up District 1, a seat that is currently now held by Democrat Representative Don Davis. Both Districts 1 and 3 are in the northeast half of North Carolina, and what lawmakers did was pull some votes out of District 3, adding them to District 1 to make both of them, 3 a little less competitive for Republicans, but making one a lot more competitive for Republicans in a hope to pick up an additional Republican congressman or woman out of the state of North Carolina. That 3-judge panel met yesterday in Winston-Salem to consider an injunction against those maps, while no cameras, no phones, no video recorders allowed into the federal courtroom in Winston-Salem yesterday. We are awaiting additional details from the courts, and if you'll remember in our conversation over the last couple of weeks about this with Mitch Kokai from the John Locke Foundation, the courts are trying to meet as many of the deadlines as possible. Starting December 1st, candidate filing will begin for the 2026 election. You might be saying, Nick, why is that happening so early? Well, some candidates will and won't have primaries that take place in March. So all candidates running in 2026, where even though some of them may not have an election until November, they all must file here in the state of North Carolina by December the 19th to be eligible for those contests. Some will have primaries coming up in March. Others will not, and will be kicking off their election in the middle parts of next year as they head into the November primary. We are keeping our eyes glued to the federal court docket system to get an update on what's going on there. As soon as we have any of those additional details, you'll learn about them first over on our website, carolinajournal.com, and then we'll bring you the latest right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:23, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. As we continue our coverage this week of U.S. Customs and Border Protection CBP operations that continue across the state of North Carolina in both Charlotte and Raleigh, this is resparking the discussion about human trafficking. And unfortunately, North Carolina pretty high towards the top of the list as it relates to human trafficking. To walk us through some of those stats, Teresa Opeka, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Teresa, according to your article over at CarolinaJournal.com, North Carolina ranks 9th in the U.S. for human trafficking. That's a miserable list to be towards the top of.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. Once again, yeah, it's definitely not a list you want to be on. The state has the dubious distinction, ranking 9th in the country for human trafficking. That's according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So their data in 2024 show that 301 cases of human trafficking involving 580 victims were identified by the state. That breaks down to 211 adults and 73 minors. Of those, 214 were female, 63 were male, and 4 were described as gender minorities. Now, the hotline did stress the numbers were not cumulative, as one case could involve multiple victims and survivors. And one of our further breakdown of the cases revealed in 2024, there were 145 reported cases of sex trafficking, 73 of labor trafficking, and then again, 38 cases of both sex and labor trafficking cases. So yeah, it's a huge issue in the state.
And it's obviously Charlotte is one of the, not only the largest city in North Carolina, but is one of the largest metros in the entire United States, Teresa. It's well within the top 25 of large metros across the country. Then you look at the eastern half of the state, the southeastern portion in Wilmington. There's a lot of human trafficking discussion going on there with the Port of Wilmington. What are some of the other data that you're tracking in this report?
Yeah, so you're mentioning Charlotte. So there is another report from 2025 from the Charlotte Metro Human Trafficking Task Force They show in 2024 there were 106 minors identified as suspected or confirmed victims of human trafficking in the city, of which 98% were identified as female, 48% involved minors 15 years old and younger. And also, data showed that there was a 76% increase in reported cases of minor trafficking in the Queen City from 2020 to 2024. So that's very, very alarming. It's across the state, but Charlotte is a major hub. Has that distinction because you've got major interstates like 77 and 85 running through the city. In the report that we had, that's easy access for traffickers to run victims from every place like South Florida right through to Charlotte, maybe keep them there and then transport them along to cities like Houston or New York or throughout the country. And also the city residents can also succumb to becoming a victim of trafficking through gang activity with criminal organizations. They have that tight hold on the area's network. And one of the gangs that was spotlighted in this report is the Bloods. So Charlotte unfortunately has, some other issues as well with this and just becoming a major hub with all the different factors in that area.
And there's no question about it. Human trafficking remains a major issue, not here just in North Carolina, but across the United States. And some of these alarming figures and facts that you're bringing forward, Teresa, 76% increase in the span of just 4 years. I'll note that was during COVID-19 and things. A lot of those things were unfortunately kind of turned upside down on their head back in that era. So hopefully that didn't cause this level of explosion in terms of the growth here in this super high percentage. And you talk about the gangs, and of course the Customs and Border Protection operation ongoing right now. You would imagine that some of those gangs are involved in some of this as well.
I would imagine so. And I think there was one report that they did actually identify one person being from one of those gangs. This past week, they arrested them in the Charlotte area. So, yeah, it would just make sense that that's who they're targeting. When you have pushback on the other side saying, they're going after innocent people, that most likely is not the case. And you are seeing that with the arrests that are happening. You mentioned about the pandemic and how the increase happened. And it may be due to the pandemic in some respects that a lot of this happens online. Do have on the report that, the different traffickers look for victims online, maybe young victims. They call it digital grooming. They can go anywhere from social media, gaming, and dating apps. And they develop this level of trust online, and then they ask them to meet offline. And which, this is amazing that this has been happening. There's also other places that we have in the report where this also takes place offline as well.
And Teresa, the task force notes in this report that the individuals that are behind these major human trafficking operations, these guys are very adept at what they do. They notice individuals' vulnerabilities or needs, build this relationship with them, and then unfortunately take advantage of them. And the next thing you know, you're part of a human trafficking operation. I would only imagine what a miserable situation that must be.
Yeah, you're mentioning they look for vulnerabilities of people, scour different locations like a bus station or a shelter or a mall, and they start to charm people, flatter them, and give them so much attention. And it might happen within certain areas with certain cultural norms. They look for people maybe who don't have a support network. They're very, very clever. And yeah, of course, there's different reports that come out every day how people's lives are ruined, even victims who have survived this, that their lives are ruined afterward because it's just so much mental anguish they've gone through, or maybe physical as well. And just, trying to rebuild their lives. It's just a terrible, terrible cycle.
While this is an awful story to be reporting and the figures are not good at all, Teresa, it is an important thing to continue to shine a light on. We've got some additional details, including some resources for individuals. Where can folks get those this morning?
Sure, they can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
We appreciate the update. Teresa Opeka joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center on your Thursday morning commute, get an update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you so much, Nick. In North Mecklenburg, the
All right, it's 5:36, so welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT, continuing our coverage this morning of Operation Charlotte's Web. This has been an operation started by Customs and Border Protection, CBP, on Saturday. As about 1 week ago, we first started hearing rumors and rumblings that it would begin, and it has since started. In the most recent press release from the Department of Homeland Security Wednesday afternoon, they have announced that in a major win for the residents of Charlotte, the United States Department of Homeland Security has arrested over 250 illegal aliens from the Charlotte area. Among those arrested are numerous criminal illegal aliens with extensive immigration and criminal histories, including domestic violence, assault, breaking and entering, larceny, driving while intoxicated, a litany of gun charges, and more. Assistant Secretary of DHS Tricia McLaughlin said in a press release, while the media and sanctuary politicians try and spread falsehoods and demean DHS law enforcement, the men and women of DHS are risking their lives and safety to arrest illegal criminal aliens that are victimizing Americans. We are going to continue to do our job and stand up for North Carolinians who live in fear because of violent criminal illegal aliens. The big question this morning is how much longer will these operations continue to take place in Charlotte as they started on Saturday? And I will be the first to admit to you that we have really no idea exactly how long. Some early reports indicated that this would last about a week, but none of that has been confirmed or made available by the Department of Homeland Security or Customs and Border Protection. And we are expecting more of the same today. Now, turning our attention to our state capital in Raleigh, where operations started on Tuesday. Those appeared to be pretty much just one-day operations, at least in large part. No major reports coming out of the Raleigh area on Wednesday. No press releases from DHS, from either CBP or ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. No information on what exactly went on in Raleigh, but we will continue to track all of the details. As soon as we get them, we'll provide them over on our website, carolinajournal.com, and right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:39. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Earlier this year during the legislative session, we talked about the DAVE Act. That stands for the Division of Accountability, Value, and Efficiency. It's a brand new division within the North Carolina State Auditor's Office. We've got the first report out from that division this morning. To walk us through some of those details, Teresa Opeka, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Teresa, this first report here is highlighting the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and an eye-popping amount of money that has not been spent on salaries. What's this report showing you?
Yeah, good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me. So, this report from State Auditor Bolick's office, it revealed that the Department of Health and Human Services generated $386 million in tax dollars for jobs that were never filled. And that's for the fiscal year of 2024 to 2025. And they went through this, and what that basically means as budgeted or lapsed salary funds. That's what that is. It can still be received by a state agency for salaries and benefits for vacant positions, but they can be used for other expenditures until a position is filled. So that's apparently what was the first DAVE Act report found from his office. But they said the Office of State Budget and Management reported that Health and Human Services generated that money, with $151 million coming from state appropriations and $235 million from receipts and federal funding. That represented 30.6% of all lapsed salary funds in North Carolina for that fiscal year. And it was the most of any state agency. But wait, there's more. Auditor said from September 25 through June 2026, the Health and Human Services Department could generate as much as $210 million in lapsed salary funds, with September alone, this past September, being conservatively estimated at $23.3 million. One other point quickly. In addition, the agency never advertised or posted 340 positions from August 2024 to August 2025. That resulted in $16.5 million in lapsed salary funds, with $4.9 million from state appropriations and 11.6 million from receipts. So that's quite a bit of money.
And Teresa, I want to make sure I understand this. And I know we've talked about lapse salaries in the past with some other audits and some other reports. The way that I understand it is if an agency is set to hire somebody and their salaries, we'll use a round number here of $100,000. If that agency sits on that job and that person is not hired, the agency is still collecting the money as if they were paying that monthly salary with benefits and everything included. And that money can pretty much be used, as I understand, for almost anything else within that agency. It's almost like a slush fund.
Yeah, and that's what it appears to be. I mean, that's what it says that and in their description, that's basically what it says. They can still be received for any position that for salaries and benefits for that vacant position, and used for other expenditures until that position is filled. But we did get a response from NCDHHS yesterday saying, well, yeah, it's not all true that what the auditor said. So we can go into that a little bit further. But basically, that's what it's looking like at this point.
Yeah, and this is something that takes place pretty much in every state agency. Now, obviously, the number is not as high as you just noted. NCDHHS had the highest out of anybody, but pretty much any state agency that has employees, which safe to say that most do, have this system set up where this can go on. Now, Teresa, this is even more relevant here in North Carolina because there's currently a war going on between NCDHHS, Governor Josh Stein, and the Republican legislature over the Medicaid rebase, and there's no money available. State Auditor Dave Bullock opined on that as well.
He did. He said when a state agency is generating hundreds of millions of tax dollars from job openings it has failed to fill, and then voluntarily enacts cuts to healthcare services, as for Medicaid cuts, which went into effect October 1st, bureaucracy is being placed ahead of the needs of North Carolinians. Those lapsed salary funds are not meant to be a permanent supplement to agency budgets. Taxpayers in North Carolina expect state agencies to provide services to the people, not let job openings stay vacant so budgets can be void. So yeah, he has some sharp criticism for the Health and Human Services Department. Of course, you just mentioned, Health and Human Services officials and Josh Stein, governor, has been calling on the General Assembly to return to Raleigh to fund the Medicaid rebase. But basically, both Senate Leader Phil Berger and House Speaker Destin Hall said no, the demand was unconstitutional and unnecessary, and that they've already allocated an additional $600 million to address the Medicaid rebase. But Health and Human Services decided to use $100 million of that to cover administrative costs. But basically, what they said is, funding is there right through April of 2026. So there's no reason that they need to come back for this. So yeah, the auditor kind of made a point to compare that, while you're cutting, or there maybe it's he said, she said, whatever cuts or whatever is going on with Medicaid, there is plenty of money there, but yeah, so you've got all this tied up.
Well, and I'm glad you bring up the $600 million that the General Assembly talked about. As we have covered this story here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, we covered that $100 million that was essentially skimmed right off the top of the $600 million for administrative costs. Teresa, I failed to wrap my head around how you could possibly need $100 million to administer a program when you've pulled in $300+ million in lapsed salaries. I mean, what's going on over at NCDHHS?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know why it would cost that much money. And then again, you've got all this other money coming in for the positions that have not been filled. Yeah, that's a good question.
Now, you mentioned that the state has responded to this audit. We typically see this, and as I understand, and I don't know if it's exactly the case with these new reports, but typically when you get a press release or a report from the auditor's office, it's not a surprise to the entity or agency. They've been in communication with either the auditor or the team under the auditor that's working on it. What did they say in response to this report?
Sure. So basically, auditor said that the department didn't provide any contradictory data. However, they did email Carolina Journal after the report was published and said, basically, the report contains, quote, misleading associations and omissions of context. Basically, they said important statutory and operational realities were ignored, including the health department's compliance with vacancy and spending restrictions. And also, Auditor Bullock's office didn't consult with Health and Human Services staff through a formal audit process, basically under the generally accepted government auditing standards. And also, they said they were not really required to reply with a full-length reply. And it also said that the report inaccurately conflates DHHS lab salaries with the Medicaid rebate shortfall. They're pinning the blame, of course, on the General Assembly, that they did not fail. They failed to, to give that money to DHHS. They also said there was a couple questions that that the auditor's office did not answer. One were the reasons for the Health and Human Services not posting certain positions considered, including some were not posted because they were being abolished. And also, State Auditor Bullock's office asked how they could share that the $386 million lapse salary figure for that fiscal year was calculated, because they say the figure is higher than their current estimates. So they said there's a lot of pushback when it comes to this, but that's not what the auditor's report had. But they did push back on what he did say.
Did they clarify any of the numbers? I mean, if you're going to say that, the $386 million is inaccurate, did they provide what they thought the estimate was on their end?
Not in this statement to us. They did not get that.
Interesting. Figure. Well, we'll, of course, keep an eye on this. Teresa, we've got a lot more, including a link to this full report from the brand new entity that exists now within the auditor's office, created by the North Carolina General Assembly earlier this year, the Division of Accountability, Value, and Efficiency. Where can folks go and get some of those additional details?
Sure. They can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
Teresa Opeka joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:48, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center on your Thursday morning commute. Get a look at the roadways as we are tracking a wild turkey situation ongoing with Boomer Von Cannon. Boomer, what's the latest?
The birds are running free, that's for sure.
Seriously.
They have another week.
Good morning again. It's 5:53. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Earlier this week, on November the 18th, Governor Josh Stein announced that a Triangle startup by the name of Vulcan Elements, which manufactures rare earth magnets, has promised to invest $918 million in Benson, North Carolina. That's located in Johnson County. According to Joseph Harris, a fiscal policy analyst for the John Locke Foundation, he says that Vulcan Elements' announcement is yet another example of why policymakers utilizing the JDIG program to benefit politically favored companies rather than creating a level playing field for all businesses. Harris says instead of gambling on a startup that has already secured massive federal funding, state leaders should focus on broad tax reforms that benefit every North Carolina business. This would be an expansion of the company's magnet production capability, establishing the world's largest magnet facility outside of China. The company has promised to create 1,000 new jobs in Johnston County, and the company was in the news just back a couple of weeks ago. We talked about it here on the Carolina Journal News Hour as they announced a $1.4 billion partnership with the federal government. Democrat Governor Josh Stein said in a press release with this JDIG announcement, quote, "The confidence that Vulcan Elements has to expand in Johnston County is proof that we have the right assets to help innovative startups scale up their business. With semiconductor chips, batteries, and now magnets, North Carolina is building an innovative and manufacturing hub that will drive the economy of the future. The expansion will be partially funded by a Job Development Investment Grant, or JDIG grant, approved by the North Carolina Economic Investment Committee on November the 18th. The project is estimated to contribute some $2.6 billion to the state's economy over a 12-year term, a formula that takes into account the new tax revenue generated by the latest jobs and capital investments. A potential reimbursement to the company could be as much as $17 million over that 12-year term as well, and that is authorized through the JDIG program. State payments, is important to note, are only made upon annual verification by the Departments of Commerce and Revenue that the company has met its job creation and investment targets. North Carolina Commerce Secretary Lee Lilly said in a press release, quote, "This major expansion by Vulcan Elements is why North Carolina continues to be recognized as the best state to do business. North Carolina brings a world-class workforce, a business-friendly environment, and an incredible research network to support our shared goal of national security, innovation, and great jobs. New positions for Vulcan Elements will include administrative, engineering, and production staff. These new positions have the potential to create an annual payroll impact of more than $81.9 million per year. According to Joseph Harris, despite the ribbon cuttings, JDIGs have a poor record. Out of nearly 450 deals made between 2003 and 2024, more than 200 were terminated or withdrawn before meeting their job creation target. You can read some additional details on this story this morning by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. Well, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.